Okay, here we are. Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction, number 5. I've got a giant wad of post-it notes right here, ready to go. And I'm just going to go through exactly the way I went through on May the 23rd, my my birthday this year, and of course I flipped right through to Half-Life, the John Allison story. Yep, there it is. Um, but I also wanted to say just how vivid an experience it was rereading Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction number 5 for the first time in nigh on 50 years. Um, One of the first things that I noticed is on the inside front cover, staff and such. Michelle Brand, Irv Watanabe, Michelle Wolfman, Don Thompson, Maggie Thompson, and Pearson's Puppeteer. I don't know what that was about. Uh, but I'm marking that one because I just found out a little while ago that Michelle Brand was Bernie Wrightson's ex-wife, and she actually moved over to Warren Publishing. I think it went Warren Publishing to Marvel Comics. Might have been Marvel Comics to Warren Publishing. But that's, you live long enough and you will find out everything. Um, the Gene Colan, Frank Chiaramonte story with a script by Roy Thomas. And this was the framing device on, on this issue of Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction. It says down in the bottom corner, slow glass concept created by Bob Shaw. And that definitely took me back to the time period in terms of by 1975, it was about a year before I was moving out of my parents' place. And in the early 1970s, they had enrolled me in the science fiction book club, um, where I think what they were trying to do was to wean me off of comic books and get me at least reading books. And if they have to be science fiction books, well, okay, it's one step at a time. Um, and I had really burned out on science fiction by that point, which is here at this point, 1975. And I had skewed off in the direction of Norman Mailer, and then rerouted by Norman Mailer in the direction of Dostoevsky. And the science fiction, even the best science fiction, just wasn't holding a candle to that stuff. I was going as much as I liked the gloss and the glitz of what science fiction contains. Here's speculation about the future. That seemed in the way to me of what writing was. I think I now understand the difference between genre and science fiction and literature. And me, I opt for literature. So it's interesting because, I see a name like Bob Shaw, and I think this is really from a completely different time period when science fiction at least seemed vast. A lot of people making a living writing science fiction and competing with each other at a very elevated level. Um, and when I see a name like Bob Shaw and the slow glass concept, it's right. That's a lot of what this was about. What kind of writing chops do you have? What sort of imagination do you have? And what can you come up with that someone hasn't come up with yet? And how scientific can you make it? The difference between sci-fi and SF and hard SF, where you're writing science fiction that you need practically PhD level um, physics chops just to write something that you hope won't be completely disproved in the next 6 months. Um, the Bruce Jones story, Paradise Found, um, art by Gray Morrow, and I think Gray Morrow was coming to the end at this point, and I really like his work. He's definitely one of the photorealists, but his heart really just wasn't in it anymore, and I don't think there was enough money coming in to really warrant the dedication that you have to put into the material in order to achieve or retain the status as a fan favorite. Um, he's got some really good pages in here, but it was definitely I'm trying to sugarcoat this a bit. It's definitely porn. It's uh, it's the willing, compliant female who's drop dead gorgeous. There's got to be something wrong with this. And yes, sure enough, when you get to the end of the story, you find out what's wrong with this. But it's like even in terms of at the time, it was this is really not aging well, and this is brand new. Um, I find the same experience reading Stan Drake's Kelly Green that he did with Leonard Starr, and it's like it's porn, but it's got absolutely there's no way that you could call it eroticism. It's porn, and it's adolescent boy style porn, and the kind of chops that Stan Drake and Leonard Starr had, you just go, guys, I really wouldn't be doing this. You know, you created a market for yourself based on the Heart of Juliet Jones and Mary Perkins on stage. And if you're going to do something for European albums, don't do tacky teenage boy style pornography. Just to say, look, here it is. We're doing adult comics. We're not doing comics for kids. And that's definitely the impression that I had with the story. I've marked what I consider. Where are we now? One of the better pages. I mean, it's a good wash story, and it's good, well inked, well balanced. Um, if you can just ignore the play, Playboy Club fantasy, it's got a lot to recommend it. Just because Gray Morrow was a brilliant artist. As far as I know, he committed suicide. and I don't know any of the details of that. Um, so I will just say I think this was not um, long before the end. Uh, the world's deadliest fighting secrets can be yours. The Black Dragon Fighting Society, the deadliest man alive. And it's like, see, that's a problem. If you're trying to be science fiction and adult and aspiring to literature, and the the best you can do in terms of full page ads in your newsstand black and white magazine is the Black Dragon Fighting Society. The world's deadliest fighting secrets can be yours. Um, I don't. Do I have to explain any more of this? I don't think I have to explain any more of this. And then turning over the page, The Many, Many Worlds of Larry Niven, a conversation with the award-winning, quote, hard, unquote, SF author. And it's got a picture of author Larry Niven with a Hugo Award. And man, if that isn't just of its time period, that exactly the clothing, the hairstyle, the way the award looks, the posture, and reading the interview, it is interesting because it is a guy trying to explain what it's like to be a hard um, science fiction writer, and just going as I'm reading the interview, I'm going. This is the realism of it. This is what it was actually like to be a science fiction writer at the time. Um, the the interviewer, Alan Brennert, uh, yeah, Niven says, yeah, I think there is. I also think that you can sell darn near anything if you're willing to take little enough money and send it to enough markets. There are editors around who can't add two and two. Or if they can, Alan Brennard says, they come up with five. Seriously, though, see, the funny thing is, him saying seriously, though, it's like, no, he is being serious. He's telling you what realistically the environment is. Um, Pay rates in the SF field seem not to have changed very much in the past 30 years. We're still getting a tremendous 2, maybe 3 cents a word. Is it really possible for a person to make a living writing science fiction? And this is Larry Niven. Larry Niven saying, usually, no. I spent most of my first few years getting 3 cents a word and then reselling the better stories. And as time went on, I would count on selling everything at least twice, maybe up to 5 times. The price goes down. You sell First American serial rights for 4 or 5 cents a word, then a little less for reprint rights. I sell to my own collection that Ballantine usually puts out, and that brings in a royalty. But now I'm getting a pretty good income on royalties and overseas sales. These are things you aren't counting on when you speak of the price for science fiction being the same as it was. Nonsense. In the pulp days, they might sell for a quarter of a cent a word, and that was all they were going to get. In the 1950s, they would sell for 3 cents a word, and 2/3 of the time, that was all they were going to get. Today, a story that you only sell once is not worth writing. Wow. I mean, just wow. 50 years later, and I'm going, that's going to make that would have made a lot of people's jaws drop at the time. This is followed by the Larry Niven story, All the Myriad Ways, which was interesting because it's basically discussing fractals. That's basically describing um, the fan fan-shaped fate of Willie Seabrook. The notion that every time you make a decision, um, that becomes the timeline that you're in, and there are all these other timelines where you didn't make that decision, and they also exist, but you're not in them. And it's like, well, okay, as a monotheist, I now look at that and go, um, I gotta tell you that that's just free will. That's the structure of God's created reality. Is choices define who you are and who you end up as being. Um, but they're trying to turn it into or Larry Niven's trying to turn it into a science fiction concept. And it's like, no, it's not. It's not a science fiction concept. It's the nature of reality. It's it, it's trying to redefine God's free will and the creation of free will as a property of physics. And it's like, well, it's not really part of the property of physics. It's God's free will. So that was very interesting to me as a monotheist. 50 years later on, reading the same comic book that I read as a devout atheist. The page that I marked here, I thought, boy, I got to tell you, I forgot how old Howard Chaykin would have been at the time, but if you look at this page, boy, he had a pretty good idea of what a drone was going to look like. It's we've all seen drones, but they definitely look futuristic. And here you have Howard Chaykin 50 years ago going, okay, what's a drone going to look like? All right, I picked this, and it's like, good call, Howard. So it's a good story. It's a good story. Howard does a good job on it, but it's definitely of its time and place. And then I come up on Fantastic Worlds by Don and Maggie Thompson, and it's this is interesting because this is hardcore science fiction fans who are doing a column, like getting paid to do a column in Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction, essentially explaining the science fiction field, explaining science fiction fandom to comic book fans, which Don and Maggie Thompson were on a foot in both worlds. They were definitely major science fiction fans and major comic book fans, and it's an interesting recap. But it was even at the time that I was reading it, I was going, all right, this is exactly why I wouldn't go to science fiction conventions, because this is exactly what they're like. Conventional behavior. Here's how to behave at conventions. Number 9, don't go out of your way to be ignored. Nearly all conventions give out name tags for members to wear. This is a big step towards starting conversations. Anyone you talk to can tell your name right away without the awkwardness of having to ask you, unless, all caps, you have scrawled your name illegibly, or worse, put down some dumb name in the mistaken idea that it is cute or funny. Then, when no one is eager to talk to you because of the phony, unfunny name, Supreme Ruler of the Universe is one of the least grating of these cute name tags. Uh, you can go away complaining that fans are snobs and won't give a poor newcomer the time of day. Meet the fans halfway and they will be glad to talk with you. Every big name fan was a young unknown fan at one time. And it's like this whole uh, big name fans and little name fans, BNFs and LNFs. And I'm going, that is so science fiction, it squeaks. And even 50 years later on, this was reinforcing for me. Yeah, I'm all done with science fiction, reading science fiction, and definitely never took to going to science fiction conventions. And here it is, 50 years later, um, and I'm re-experiencing it. Nice job, Don and Maggie Thompson, um, trying to speak to comic fans from a science fiction fan perspective. Not working for me. Virtual reality, story The Addict, and it's got a different take on it in terms of this is the guy who created a treatment that gets rid of all of your dreams, so you no longer dream, and the dreams are replaced with this cybernetic helmet. It's definitely virtual reality 50 years ago. So even though it's kind of a dumb story, I will give it major marks for, yeah, you will live to see this. You will live to see this. Okay, flipping through the rest of that. Then we come to Half-Life, starring the USS Agamemnon, and boy, I was right. I remembered that the lettering on the story was exponentially better than whoever had lettered the story. It might even have been John Allison himself when it first appeared in Orb magazine, and it's an interesting story, and the whole thing starts to pull together in terms of, particularly with this one as the capstone story in Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction #5. On the page where the old man that he has sort of brushed aside says, you'll get the karma, you'll suffer for all of them. Listen, man, don't give me any karma schmarma crap. And he interrupts, yin and yang, good and evil, you'll get what's coming to you. Good begets good, evil begets evil. And you'll be a monument to evil for all eternity. So it's interesting because, again, it's trying to be sort of new agey before a new age, and trying to be science fiction at a peak of science fiction, and all it's really doing is reiterating free will and how it works. The whole snakes and ladders thing of you make too many snake choices and you end up where you don't want to be with snake choices. You make enough latter choices, and you will rise above it. And it is interesting that from this perspective, knowing roughly what the story was about, going, well, this is interesting. This is just a strange paraphrase of God's free will, but being portrayed as the wave of the future. So I think, yeah, that brings us to the end of Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction number 5, except for I was wrong. If we ever doubted that, we never have to doubt that again. That Orb magazine wasn't credited with being the first place that Half-Life had appeared. The Shape of Things That Came is the name of the letter column, and it says at the bottom of the first page, John Allison, innovator of this issue's story, Half-Life, is a young Canadian artist whom ye editor met at a one-day comics convention this past October in Toronto. So that narrows it down. It was October 1974. Well, maybe not so much, quote, met, unquote, as, quote, was followed around by, unquote. It seems John A. had this massive portfolio of art and story and wanted Roy to take a look at it. There was hardly adequate opportunity at the Minicon itself, but Roy borrowed the portfolio overnight, liked much of what he saw, and decided to purchase Half-Life, a story already published in Orb magazine, a high-quality experimental comic art fanzine, of which John is an associate editor and art director. Well, he was at the time, but at the time that Half-Life appeared, I think, but not very long after that. And I think James Whaley's molars are still grinding over a high-quality experimental comic art fanzine. But that's something that I've talked about before. There was just fanzines, prozines, and professional magazines, and nobody confused those. There will be more of this talented newcomer in the future, if you like. We know he would, and frankly, so would we. And if you've a notion to try an issue of Orb, which we recommend, you can purchase a sample copy by sending $1.25 or $1 in Canada to Orb Publications, 660 and a half Bloor Street West, number 1, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Tell them Marvel sent you, and still does. And then there's a self-portrait of John Allison at the top of the next page. So I'm gonna mark both of those and just make the further note of the odd way that careers unfold. As far as I know, this was John Allison's only appearance at Marvel, and his only appearance in professional comics, because commercial art just lured him away. Obviously, in October 1974, he was desperate to attracted Roy Thomas's attention, and got an in at Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction, and obviously had the door open for future work, and it just didn't happen. So it's not like you can just let things unfold. If you want to be in comics, you better bear down on it, because the stones are always sliding under your feet. So there you go. Thank you, Matthew, for Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction number 5. What an experience for Dave Sim 50 years after the fact.